building is not something I would say is a product, but then it's something, a living being, like how we consider city or the villages to be. And please think about it as like a living being that is reacting to your environment around, considering how we are building right now with the concrete and cement and everything. There is going to be 3x or at least 5x of more consumption of cement and concrete in the coming days per year. That means it's going to double, and housing is going to be one of the major contributing sector from the buildings itself. If I have to use the trending terms, decarbonization, net zero, net carbon, all of the efforts are happening, but the basic principles lie in like how do you build locally or how do you ensure that happens. That means the market needs to actually provide you a support there, or the knowledge that existed needs to come into existence again. That means the scientific and the traditional knowledge needs to work together.
Did you know that constructions and building sector contributed to 17% of GHG emissions in India? Now that's a staggering number, and it clearly indicates that the way in which we are constructing our homes and cities is a major contributor to the climate crisis. But here's the solution. Simple, thoughtful changes in how we approach construction and architecture can make a world of difference. By embracing sustainable practices, we can not only create homes and buildings that are more environmentally friendly, but also make them healthier, more comfortable, and more cost effective in the long run. In this episode, we delve into the crucial aspects of sustainable architecture and construction. We explore how traditional wisdom, local knowledge, and modern innovations can come together and work with nature and not against it. To guide us on this journey, we have Akshata, a sustainable architecture advocate who recently built her own home and is currently working as a strategist in the construction division for Rainmatter Foundation. She'll help us ask the right questions and nudge us to make a difference in the way we approach sustainable built environment. Thank you so much, Akshata, for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Likewise, thank you for inviting me to have this conversation with you, Anirudh. Looking forward to the conversation.
Akshata, can we first begin by understanding broadly that what are the primarily environmental and social issues associated with our conventional construction ways?
Okay, so before getting into the problem, I'll set a context about like how construction is, very important, and from there, the different problems that we are facing. So, building is something which is very crucial for human being to live, or any living being, right? Shelter. So we started with this instinct of like building with the way we learned, or building with the way things are around us, what is available, and with the knowledge system that each geography or place had, right? But then we slowly moved away from it, as in when the development started happening, or industrialization, or whatever the reasons that started happening, and then we moved away from that, which led to the issues like only certain set of elements or materials are available, only certain set of knowledge systems are available, and then and when you talk about design and availability of these, right, the viability of these existing solutions to certain layers of the society started becoming more lesser, or that gap that existed started becoming more. So with respect to that, and the ideology of the housing or a shelter started becoming more uh, uh, economy based than a need based, right? So we started looking at our places based on the investment or savings, or something else, or showcasing our status, than actually curating or building it for the need that we required for. So with this ideology, and as in when we grew away from the basic instinct of like it's a need, we started having issues like access to materials become a big huge issue for vulnerable communities around, or access to better designs started becoming more difficult for people, and even access to land started becoming issue, because of which we started going vertical, right? So and also, if you see the ecosystem of the construction or buildings itself, it's all defined by only few major nodes that exist in the sector, right? So instead of everyone that is part of the system defining these, only certain nodes started, because of which the availability of place or space as a basic need started being moved away. So, which again is linked to the social aspect of like, why do we see slums or these affordable housing and all of this being built bad? Because the expertise, the knowledge system that needs to actually be invested in that is being invested somewhere else, right? So why are we not looking at that? And then from there, why are we only choosing certain methodology? Because we want to go faster in this whole run towards the numbers, and then do everything quickly. We stopped thinking consciously, and then looking at building more productively, because of which I think the issues like mental health, well-being of the occupant, or a lot of other things. So coming from that point of view, I think building right now, uh, if I have to summarize that in one line, buildings have been a tool for us to be live in a place, interact with a place, and then be resilient to anything that was happening around us, than a growth or development or a showcase. So I think that is where a lot of issues started happening, and then we are where we are now.
First of all, it's very enlightening to know how you've put it. I was also interviewing Dr. Divya Sharma few weeks back, and she's also an urban planner. And she also raised the same questions that you're talking about. Are we really asking the right questions? So very good to know. Would you also want to top it up with the some of the environmental concerns, that
Definitely.
how
Yeah.
this construction industry is this growth and developmental mindset industry, how and where it is heading, is also leading it to a lot of environmental harm. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I would want to highlight that in a lot of our conversation that we are going to have, because if you see the way the consumption of buildings happening, or the way we are building our houses or commercial places or even the infrastructure, right? Where are these materials coming from? All of these are from the nature or biodiversity around us, right? And we don't consider that, because the moment you want to build your own home, the materials are productized and then you get it in the market, but you don't understand where it is coming from, right? Be it the sand that we are getting for our walls, be it the cement that is coming for our walls, or be it the some kind of like finishings, all of it, the base of it is actually from the environment around us. And we have failed to realize that connection, and that is where having an understanding of where you are building, the contextual understanding of like the kind of the buildings that we are building is responding to where it is located, what are the different existing wisdom of construction, or who are the people that you can work with, all of it comes into picture. So if I can give the example of my own experience of we recently built our house in the coastal Karnataka, and the first the moment we realized we have to build in a coastal area, you have to understand the climatic condition, you have to understand the way things are actually built, you have to understand the stresses that are actually happening there from the point of climate, as well as there's also a lot of natural phenomenon that happens, right? Heavy rainfall, and then these are all like crazy rainfall, which is like very angular, and then and from there, if I can actually zoom out and give an idea of like, we used to have sloping roofs for a reason, right? But why did we move to a flat roof? So again, going back to the experience, so we had to like start with like how things are built locally, because there is a reason why laterite blocks are used, or the laterite stone blocks are used than an ACC or cement blocks, right? Because it was available locally, and then people knew how to build with it. The moment you introduce an alien material or like something that you get it from centralized production, the skill for it to get done is easier, but the maintenance becomes difficult. I mean, everyone used to know how to maintain their houses at some point, but then we now, how many of us know how to fix some plumbing or like how to do some finishing within our houses, right? So it's the local understanding that we moved away from, and coming back to the experience is like we try to understand how locally things are built and what are the materials that are locally available. We had our own challenges because we wanted to look at exposing the laterite blocks, because you don't have to have a finishing all the places, but then considering the amount of the rainfall, the moisture, you have to have some kind of like smooth finishing to it, and also the usage of certain places, right? But then we couldn't find people who could actually do it. When we started researching why we are not able to find it, we realized that everybody is building with ACC blocks or some centralized material. So the skill that existed is lost. And that means the way you reacted to your environment is also lost, right? And you're depending on something that is harming your place. So that's something which I wanted to share, because the moment environment comes in, buildings used to react to the environment, but we have stopped doing that, while we are also going for more easier and centralized products and construction techniques in the name of like making everything easier and accessible. So yeah.
So, Akshata, if I was to divide this experience of yours into two parts, so someone is listening to this conversation and they are wondering, right, like it is harming the environment, but could you also illustrate how much, just so that, I mean, what I'm trying to do is that if someone's listening, how strong of a nudge do they feel
Right.
that this one construction activity that I'm undertaking, this is harming the environment in such a way. And also considering we know how carbon intensive all these practices are, maybe if you can share some numbers with us. Also considering the fact that now that you're telling that you built locally and you being an architect yourself, someone who is in this industry, faced struggles. So the follow-up question to that would be, how as an individual, if I'm trying to build my new home and I want to go local, what are some of the things that you might want to share with people, that how they can indulge with their architect, what they can ask them and build a more sustainable home?
Right. Yeah. So to answer to your first question, right, the impact, just to give an idea of like what is the impact might look like. Uh, I don't have the exact numbers, but what I can actually give is like, from the way we are gonna build, or considering how we are building right now with the concrete and cement and everything, there is going to be 3x or at least 5x of more consumption of cement and concrete in the coming days per year. That means it's going to double, and housing is going to be one of the major contributing sector from the buildings itself. Consider there is commercial and there is industrial and then there is hospitality and everything also. So this is just a small number, and And the way we are actually investing in concrete or cement, and be it like the way we are designing our houses, our energy consumption also is going to be increasing. Right now, we are at a place where 25 to 30 percentage of the energy consumption of the overall sector, the different sectors that are contributing to it, 25 to 30 percentage is from the construction industry. And that's going to increase more because the cooling requirement is going to increase more. That means heat stress is going to reach even a tier 2 and tier 3 cities. Bangalore had a worst heating crisis last year. So, a city like Bangalore started having ACs within their spaces. Consider how it is going to be in different cities. That means more energy consumption. And we're all talking about only the cooling needs, but then heating need is something which is going to be starting, especially in the belt like Himachal, Uttarakhand, the Nepal borders, and everything. And we are not even accounting for that. So, a lot of it is going to contribute to the kind of the impact that is needs to be looked at. And apart from this, the material consumption that we are doing, especially for buildings, is not locally sourced, right? It's all coming from somewhere. That means there's also an embodied carbon that comes into picture, that right. So where is it being produced, how much energy that is actually being utilized in order to produce. And we're all only in the scope 1 and the scope 2 aspect of this carbon emissions and everything. But then scope 2 also is not very in detail, but then the moment you actually add it into your buildings also, you need to look at maintenance of those materials, the longevity of it, right? And we are not accounting that in any of our studies or anything. So that is where we don't have any exact numbers for a lot of these things also, and some efforts are going around that. So I hope that answers your first question, and that gives like an understanding of where we are heading with the buildings and materials and things like that. From there, if I come to the second question,
Would you
huh?
would you want to briefly explain what scope 1 and scope 2 is so that someone who's
Yeah,
listening understands it?
yeah.
Yeah.
Scope one is basically where are your materials, or basically raw materials coming from, be it any kind of like production, or be it like any kind of like binding. So any process that you take, manufacturing, where are your materials are actually sourced from, and is it locally or is it somewhere else? Then what is the kind of the energy, or what is the kind of the effort that needs to go in. So some calculation that happens there, that is the scope one. Basically what happens before getting the raw materials to the manufacturing or the production center. So similarly for buildings, where are your materials coming from, or where are the different combination of materials coming from? Scope 2 is where in the process of construction, when the different buildings comes in order to have the finalized product of your house or buildings or anything, how much energy is actually utilized, or carbon that is actually emitted from that. And scope 3 is once you have something in your hand as a ideal product or a house or even a space, the maintenance and the operation part of it and everything that comes into. Because if I can give an example of a building itself, the maintenance operation is where HVAC, AC, appliances, everything would come in, which again leads to a lot of these things. So, yeah, that I
Thanks for
think,
that.
yeah. So,
Thanks.
and coming to the second question, how do I build, or what should I do as if I have to build more sustainably, or at least consciously? Because right now sustainability is premiumized and not affordable for everyone, right? So how do I make it more consciously is what I would put it across. And so if you, I'll take the example of a house or a place, okay? Because house is something which everybody can actually relate to. And if you want to build your house and have an idea of like, okay, this is how I want to actually look at building, please start with like, where are you building? Place becomes very important, because the moment we don't understand the place, we don't respond to it properly, 40 to 50 percentage of the idea of the sustainability goes, is lost, because you have to react to each and everything that happens in a place. And that means geography also. So, say for example, I am linking that back to the experience that I had. We decided that we want to build our house in the coastal Karnataka, and we started analyzing, okay, if I have to build in my this kind of location, then what is the climate there? Is it a hot and humid, or is it a hot and dry, or is it a composite? Because the way you're building house in Bangalore is totally different from the way you have to build in Kerala or Northeast or any other places, because our climatic conditions are very different from each other. So understanding that becomes very crucial while you have a vision for, oh, this is how my house needs to look and everything also. So if you don't do that, what happens is that you won't live comfortably in your place. So you'll have to do a lot of trade-offs of having AC, dehumidifiers or humidifiers, or like ventilation and everything. So that adds on to the cost of your expenditure. So understanding of the place becomes very crucial. While this happens, second would be the climate, and third would be like, how do people used to build in a place like this? Because that's where you rely on the existing knowledge that used to be there. So what we did when we were building our house was like spoke to a lot of masons and spoke to a lot of contractors, spoke to a lot of like people who had houses. Like, why did you build in certain way? Because we all live in a city, and we have our understanding of building is like boxes with cement, concrete terraces and glasses and everything, right? But it's also very curious to know like how we are building in certain way. And so we started asking questions, and then we realized it's again a response to the local climate, natural phenomenon, and then also the needs. And then that's one of the reason why, if you see geographically also, we have the same buildings everywhere. So which is crazy, at least for me. So how do you look at that? And then while you're actually exploring this part of it, you also understand the different materials, the different construction techniques. Why is a stone used and not a brick? And then why is a window in certain way and not this way? And why is my roof slope and not flat, right? So you understand that. And once you understand that, because if you have to live comfortably in your home, at least do this homework for your house. And once you do that, you find your, if you think you need an architect or someone who can actually facilitate this, because architecture also, designers are also, is someone who will enable this thought process and then put it into something that it can be built. They're not coming there always to, hey, you need to build it this way, right? So please do your homework first and then go to someone who can facilitate that. And once that happens, I think making sure that all of this actually gets built on ground is very crucial. So that's something which you can look at it. And also, that's in the design phase, I would say. And from there, when you go to like execution, or like, because I don't want to get into the design phases or whatever, but then when you go to the execution is very crucial, because the materials that you're sourcing, the market that exists, you have to understand where you're putting, because it adds cost to your pocket also, but then it's also conscious choice that one makes, like, do I have to go get my marble from Italy or Rajasthan or somewhere else, but can I actually source a chapadi stone that is right next to me? So making that conscious choices or trade-offs is very important, and and also understanding the local construction skills is very crucial, because if you don't understand that, in the coming days or in future, you won't be prepared for whatever that happens. You'll have to depend on someone from the city to come back and then do the repair for you. Do we want to be in that place, or do you want to be in a place where you can do everything? So it comes from these kind of like, and I feel like if you do this, you're in a better place already, and then yeah, rest would be taken care by people who would want to build it for you. So yeah.
It's very antithetical, while you were saying that. Like, I was just looking outside, and it's all matchboxes, you know.
Yes.
And it's so tough to imagine, like, did we ever live in a way which was different than this? Obviously, we lived,
Yeah.
but it's just that in our short-lived memories, it's so tough to imagine that is there any alternative? I was in Ladakh last month, and interestingly, there as well, it's so fascinating that the local knowledge is lost.
Yeah.
I mean, even at high tops, you see that even in such a dry region, you would find a lot of concrete houses. I was talking to someone, they were like, they had 6 or 7 techniques of mudding together different roofs, but it's not happening, you know. So I think, as you said, the idea is to first ask ourselves the right questions and put in a little bit of conscious effort, if not with respect to at least, if it's not material, but at least with respect to design,
Yeah.
with respect to other things, like we take a move towards sustainability.
Right.
Having said that, would you want to discuss some of the interesting trends or developments that are going on in the sustainable architecture space? Where are we heading? Do you see some of the promising materials coming up, or something that you might want to share with respect to exciting that is happening in your field?
Yeah. I mean, while there is also an effort or push to like look at uh, uh, more construction that reduces time and then like money and less skill also. But then there is also another side to it, which is looking at like how do we build better, right? So there's a lot of efforts that are being done, like be it the scientific knowledge of understanding the materiality for India, because India, like we all know, is very different from each region, right? That means each region had its own material to utilize and everything. So there are a lot of efforts that are actually happening where how do we kind of like look at bringing back those materials than the typical conventional materials that we use also. How do we kind of like bring back the skills that existed there and all of it, while also, if I have to use the trending terms, decarbonization, net zero, net carbon, all of the efforts are happening. But the basic principles lie in like how do you build locally or how do you ensure that happens. That means the market needs to actually provide you a support there, or the knowledge that existed needs to come into existence again. That means the scientific and the traditional knowledge needs to work together. So there are a lot of efforts around that. While this happens, how do you take this forward for the future? That means focus on a lot of young designers, young skill-based workers, and then like young future builders also. How do you make sure all of them actually understand, take forward these thought processes also? So a lot of like, be it at the academic level or at the outside the academics also, as vocational training, because how many of us actually know how to work with bamboo? I mean, I don't know personally, being an architect too. So how do we look at like making sure we know the basics of it? So there are a lot of efforts, colleges that are actually making sure these kind of like skill training happens for the students. And while this happens, there's also a social lens to design, right? So because climate is has placed itself in a very a complex system where design as a tool can actually work towards reducing the social aspects of different things, as well as building in resilience, right? Like an Anganwadi is a good resilient shelters for a community which is going through crisis and again a help. So how do you look at that also is somewhere that is being done. While this is all being done, there is also a lot of innovations, technological as well as both material innovations that are going ongoing, and efforts towards how do you facilitate these innovations, right? Because a lot of the time what happens, buildings being like something where if you are to understand its proof or if you have to understand its impact, it takes good 1 year, right? So if I'm an innovator who is actually coming in and saying, hey, my material works better, you'll be like, where is the sabut, right? So how do you kind of like tackle these gaps and challenges? So a lot of builders are actually opening up and then saying, hey, you are an innovator, come work with us. We can actually give you a place to kind of like prove your technology. And one good thing is also a lot of the real estate developers, commercial developers, and everyone are having their own sustainable cells. So a lot of the knowledge building, knowledge understanding, and are we actually building better, all of this can also happen in house, while that becomes an open source knowledge system also. So you don't have to repeat the process for everyone again and again. So while this happens on the industry side, there's also a lot of financing and policy push that is going for how do you make our PMAY housing or affordable housing more better? Because there was a mistake that was done, but how do we kind of like reflect on that and do better? So creating space for innovations there, also looking at like a lot of collaboration, and there are also efforts where
Now, if we were to put all of these promising aspects within some resources, so for example, I'm someone who wants to build something. Are there any resources online available or any such, like, because we couldn't obviously go into the nuances of it, and I'm not from the background, so I will not be able to ask you the right questions. But are there any resources which someone can refer to if they are building their new home online or
Yeah,
anywhere?
yeah. So there are a lot of the resources that you could look at, but implementation. When I talk about implementation, please speak to someone who is implementing it. Be it the
Okay.
mason, or be it the designer, or be it the contractor, or a civil engineer, because they are the one ultimately. But then for you to kind of like understand the different nuances of the building, there are in terms of material, I mean, I've been working with someone called as Matadama, who helps you understand how much impact the way you're planning to build your house can actually do on the environment as well as on the other aspect, and what can you do, what are the different solutions that are available. So they have something called as ST plus, which you can, which they're trying to make it more open source, and then that also links to what are the different materials that are actually sustainable, or where is it coming. Because if you see the way India Mart works now, you don't get an understanding where this material coming from, right? That's something which you guys are trying to also tackle on. And there is online platforms like NZEB, which is nzeb.com, which NZEB, which also kind of like at least gives you an understanding of like how to build consciously. What are the different aspects of it, which is basically natural lighting. How do you kind of like utilize the existing day lighting? If you don't have, I mean, considering how the cities are growing, if you don't have place where you can actually get a natural lighting, what are the different methods? Natural ventilation. And if you want to go for an active solutions like HVAC and everything, what can be done and how do you react to your place? All of it actually is there. And I mean, PMAY itself has a book called as Pahal, which kind of like talks about if you're someone who is looking at building affordably in a very rural context and things like that. They have a very nice set of like instructions and the construction techniques, setups, and how do you kind of like plan your house. I mean, all of this would have like a one bedroom, right? Irrespective of that, how culturally they are all different and materially also. So all of the, I mean, these are something which I can actually mention here, and yeah,
I'll share these resources in the description. Yeah.
yes,
So,
yeah.
okay. Thank you so much. Akshata, these were all the questions that I had. We're
Hmm.
running out of time. So, I just want to understand if you have any last thoughts which you want to share here before we conclude the call.
Yes, I mean, I would just like put across the message that please build consciously, and building is not something I would say is a product, but then it's something, a living being, like how we consider city or the villages to be. And please think about it as like a living being that is reacting to your environment around, and while you're doing, there are a lot of people who can actually support you on this. So instead of depending on only certain set of people, look out for the options there is, it's already available. And from that lens, I would just want to end it by saying it's a tool that can help you live comfortably and also builds the resilience for whatever the climate crisis that's going to come in. So please be conscious the way you are building. So yeah.
Yeah. I'm just thinking that I was told that 70% of India is still to be built by
Yes.
the end of the century.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if we just think about the impact that this industry can have, it's magnanimous. So, thank you so much for sharing all these insights. I'm hopeful that somewhere down the line, this discussion will at least nudge people to think a little and then make conscious choices. And hopefully, that this industry can, because it has such a big impact, can have an impact
Right.
in mitigating some of the problems that we are facing today. Thank you so much for your time, and I'm highly grateful that you came and share your thoughts with us today. Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you so much. And I am going with the same hope of nudging people. Thank you.